On the surface, a girl fighting mushroom fungus zombies has nothing in common with a little Viking boy from the 11th century. But there is two things that they both have in common. A lot of anger and no dad.
Joel, fucking get up! Please stop! Please don't shoot! Joel, please get up! No! Fucking kill you! I'm gonna kill you!
Vinland Saga and The Last of Us 2, while taking place in two completely different places, in two completely different times, are in many ways trying to tell you the same story. A story of loss, of hatred, of violence, and of revenge. Both of these pieces of media and their main characters display the most base instincts of a human being in order to satiate their quest for violence. But on that journey of revenge, the main people getting hurt were themselves and those closest to them. And it wasn't until their journey ended, either by force or by circumstance, that they were forced to reckon with what they had done and ultimately, who they became. Typically, revenge is not a passive endeavor. Revenge is a violent endeavor because typically it's a response to violence in of itself. Of course, the levels of violence change depending on the initial act. Like for instance, Abby hits a hole-in-one on Joel, but then for the remaining 99% of the game, Ellie's packing up all her friends. There is always a cause and effect. In many ways, a cycle of violence has never really started, but more so it's just this thing that's ever present. Because even on some microscopic level, we're all experiencing or doling out violence constantly. And honestly, it doesn't ever feel like this ends. Imagine if at the end of The Last of Us 2, instead of sparing Abby, Ellie kills her. What would have happened at that point? Ellie would have left, Lev would have recovered, added a new RIP to his Instagram bio, and then spun back. And then say he kills Ellie. What's next there? Dina spins back, and then the circle never ends. We end up with a blood feud. Typically in cases of revenge, there's always this underlying naivety around it, like, oh, I'm just gonna no-scope this dude and call it a day, and then everything is gonna be good. As if the people you're trying to kill don't also have people willing to do what you're doing now for your loved ones. It's actually low-key offensive. What am I, a hideous creature? Am I incapable of being loved because I'm chopped? Chopped people can be loved too. Revenge almost always begets revenge. And the thing about it is that in both Ellie and Thorfinn's cases, they really just didn't care. There is a driving rage behind wanting to engage in an act of revenge. I mean, obviously, right? Nobody's gonna be happy chasing their father's killer, but it's actually deeper than that. The anger that compels Thorfinn and Ellie to commit all these different acts of violence in the name of vengeance is also an anger that twists and contorts them into people that are unrecognizable to who they were. In season 1, as we go on the journey with Thorfinn, we see everything about him change. And I know he got older and everything, but it's not even just age that I'm talking about. It's more so that everything he was prior to the death of Thor's just didn't exist anymore. It got hollowed out by this hate, and it created a person who only thought about vengeance. Askeladd even asked him at the end of the season,
"How do you intend to live from this day on, long after I've rotted away?"
And the look on Thorfinn's face says 1,000 things, but chief among them is, "Nuh-uh." And Ellie goes through the same thing, but I would actually say it's a little more pronounced because where Thorfinn was alone becoming this new person, Ellie was just with her friends randomly tweaking out. It's kind of like when you're friends with that one kid in class, just in case. The mentality that you're forced to adopt to somebody seeking revenge is not healthy. It compels people to shed everything about them that makes them human and forces them to contort into this monstrous kind of person incapable of seeing past your goal. The cycle of violence never keeps itself specific to only your enemies. The violence also gets turned on to yourself. And we saw this over the entirety of Vinland Saga and Last of Us 2, where Thorfinn and Ellie, while both pursuing revenge, became very hollow people. In Thorfinn's case, it was the fact that he wasn't able to kill Askeladd, which, okay, while watching the show is genius writing, but if you think about it in a vacuum, it's so unbelievably funny. Like, this is generational hatred. Not being able to smoke his top op led to Thorfinn being borderline suicidal is actually so hilarious to me. But in reality, it's not fun watching people become these animals who are only chasing their next kill. It's actually very unnerving because on some deeper level, while I definitely understand seeking out revenge, you gotta think about who you're gonna be after after. And from what I've seen in The Last of Us 2 and Vinland Saga, the people that Thorfinn and Ellie become after going on this quest for vengeance are not good people. They're people who are only driven by the next drop of blood. And eventually when it comes down to it and your journey is over, you have to think about the cost that was extracted. Not just on your loved ones or on your enemies, but also the cost you extracted from yourself. Nobody actually wants to seek out revenge. On some animal level, I would say people instinctively understand it's a process that's killing you. Both Ellie and Thorfinn at the end of their journeys had to learn the hard way, and I would wager that on some deep level, they understood that there was a steep cost extracted from them on this journey. So what do you do at that point? You spent months, potentially years in Thorfinn's case, just chipping away at yourself, turning yourself into essentially the kid who tells you not to come to school tomorrow. And then what? Well, you do what any self-respecting outlaw with tuberculosis does. You try and squeak out some redemption. In my Vinland Saga Season 2 video, I talked about how I like that the show changed from having Thorfinn and his crew face constant external conflicts to the second season being centered around Thorfinn's internal conflict. Let's be honest, cards on the table. Thorfinn might go to hell. I mean, who's to say for certain, but my point is that Season 2 of Vinland Saga spent a lot of time illustrating how Thorfinn's journey created a lot of pain, not just for the people he killed, but also himself. The entire point of the second season was Thorfinn having this epiphany and realizing that in order to become a new person, to have any chance of righting the many wrongs he committed, he needs to be able to redeem himself. That's why he does everything he does on the farm. It's why he eventually goes out on his journey to reach Vinland and create a place where people can live in peace. The Last of Us 2 is a little bit different. In the case of Vinland Saga, there were a lot of political aspects surrounding everything, whereas The Last of Us 2 was more deeply personal. Abby killed Joel because he killed her father. Joel killed her father to save Ellie, and Ellie went after Abby because she loved Joel. Despite having very similar stories, don't get me wrong, I almost want to say that the feelings surrounding Ellie and Thorfinn's journeys felt different. I understand there was kind of like politics and factional and regional beef going on in The Last of Us 2, I get it, but to be honest, the entire game, I was pretty much just locked into making sure Abby didn't make it to Last of Us 3, or do another boat scene with Owen. Whereas in Vinland Saga, for 3 episodes, I was like, oh, we gotta kill Askeladd, we gotta do it, he killed Thors, we gotta go kill him. And then by like episode 12, we're invading London? Bro, get me out of here! Also, I guarantee that if anyone fought Thorfinn with the tuna spud, he would have folded. My point here is that despite both of them understanding that their journeys for revenge turned them into bad people, they both had to go about redeeming themselves in different ways. Thorfinn understood that a huge external factor to his journey and the pain that he caused was war. And so because of that, he felt it necessary that in order to redeem himself and pay the cost, he needed to create a place where war did not exist, and where the same kinds of people that he used to kill, or help kill, could live in peace. Despite how narrow Ellie's journey was, she still experienced a lot of the same things as Thorfinn, and ultimately needed to make amends just like he did. Interestingly enough, both Ellie and Thorfinn have a combined success rate of 0% when it comes to sliming their villains, but are both shown to have been able to begin the journey of healing necessary to achieve the redemption that they need. In Ellie's case, it was a lot more subtle just because it was the end of the game, but after sparing Abby and giving herself the chance to heal from the trauma of her journey in Joel's death, Ellie heads back to the farmhouse to patch things up with Dina. But the house is empty and Dina is nowhere to be found. Which honestly, I like that because it shows how the road to redeeming yourself isn't this easy thing that just happens on a whim. There is a struggle and a fight that has to be made so that you can better yourself and cut ties with the person that existed during your journey of revenge. In both The Last of Us 2 and Vinland Saga, despite not being able to see much of Ellie's journey, it's very clear that both Ellie and Thorfinn have to undergo a long journey to get away from the demons that they let loose. And that's what I love so much about their stories. I appreciate that the kind of people they become on their missions were not these bombastic caricatures, but very possible realities for people that undergo severe trauma after severe trauma. And I also like that despite both of them approaching their quest for forgiveness and redemption differently, both The Last of Us 2 and Vinland Saga make it clear that these journeys aren't going to be easy, and it's likely going to be even more difficult than the journeys of revenge that they took in the first place. The Last of Us 2 and Vinland Saga, while not taking place in the same time, place, or having really anything to do with each other, both manage to make a fantastic story that ties into each other and gives meaningful insight to what it means to not have a dad. Gives meaningful insight to what it means to be human and how easily the actions we take can strip us of our own humanity. But they also give us meaningful insight on what it means to forgive, or maybe not even forgive, but just not to hate your enemies, yourself, the world, I don't know. But it teaches us how, despite going to the edge of the cliff in terms of your actions and behaviors, you do still have the opportunity to redeem yourself. Even if it's a long journey, and even if it hurts, it's still best to do it anyways. Subscribe, like, comment. I'll see you next week.
Brand new chrome heart glasses, 2100, got me seeing different. I had to leave some niggas inside my past, cause I couldn't see them with me. Ho gon' fuck for a trick, I buy a watch, cause time go on. Know I'm doing right, cause I'm rich and everybody else where it did me wrong. I been living life too sly, nigga ain't got a right, cause I think in form. It's that time of the month when I get my check, I manifest fully formed. Can't no